Good evening. I'm hereby calling to order the June 12th meeting of the Committee of the Whole. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Valstria.
Present.
Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mrs. Finney.
Here.
Mr. Mano. Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The purpose of the meeting tonight is a presentation concerning a proposed contract aquatics and community center project. Tonight, we have level heads here with us this evening to give us the presentation. If you'd like to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Christopher Trotta. Address is 6925 Chadbourne Drive, Valley View, Ohio, 44125.
Thank you.
And with me today is my son, Christopher Trotta, as well.
Whenever you're ready.
So Jason Olde, project manager with GPD Group, 1228 Euclid Avenue, Suite 320, Cleveland, Ohio. I just wanted to summarize, I guess, the overall process first before we had Chris go through the presentation in terms of how we got to selecting Chris, just for people that were not part of the selection committee. So on May 14th, we had 15 different submissions that were submitted in response to an RFQ for the A&E services that we had. With that, then we combined all of those and distributed them to the selection committee and developed a scorecard that we used to independently, each member of the selection committee scored and ranked their, reviewed and ranked each of the submissions that we've got. And from that point, when we compiled the scores, we looked at the overall shortlist and determined we were going to shortlist the firms down to 5, which we would bring in for an interview process. And as part of that process, what we did is we actually set up what we call a pre-interview meeting, and what we allowed was all of those 5 shortlisted firms to come in, meet the selection committee, kind of hear some of the history to the project and some of the vision, from the administration, and we had a council member represented as well in terms of what we're looking to try to achieve. And again, to give each team sort of that background and have them be well prepared for when we did the interview presentations. So then June 2nd, we had then all 5 present to us. Chris's team was one of the teams that presented. Following that meeting, we had each, similar situation to the RFQs. We developed a score matrix. We had each of the members independently their firm, and through that process, level heads with the team of Leggett Architects was the one that was the recommendation from the selection committee. From that point, Chris and I worked together to negotiate a fee proposal, and that's what you'll see as part of the council agenda tonight for review and approval. But we wanted to give the opportunity for the rest of council to really kind of see some of the presentation that was presented to us in the selection committee, and give you an opportunity to ask any questions in advance of that.
Okay. Mr. Trotta, you can come forward. Thank you.
Thanks for having us here today. It was a really good process that we went through that really helped us in our approach to the design and to showing our qualifications. Really was to explore the project in all aspects of it. So we actually came forward with a very detailed design in steps for the couple times that we met with you in the RFQ process with the selection committee, and really thought through the project as if we were working on it already, and that was our approach. And you'll see on these slides that you have in front of you on your monitor, this is conceptual only, illustrating our design capabilities. That's what we really wanted to share, is like what sets us aside from the other teams, and then also really get entrenched with the community, with the process, and get engaged so that if and when we were selected, we could hit the ground running and have a real good basis for design. And on these easels are just a couple of the images that we will share today of our process. Let's go to the next slide. Please, throughout this, if you have questions, please ask. These are some of the slides from the presentation at the interview. And really, it's not just level heads on this project. There are about 13 to 14 other consultants, from structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, civil engineers, all the way to signage and wayfinding consultants to implement the project. So we're going to be a partner, a team with GPD and yourselves to deliver this project throughout. And this is sort of a pinwheel of the process going through programming, planning, schematic design, design development, construction documents, and then implementing the project alongside of a construction manager who will also be brought on board in short order to help with the implementation of the project. Our collaborators, Leggett Architects, we work with them on school projects, and we brought them in because they have 80% of their work has been on governmental projects, a lot of commercial projects dealing with community centers as well as ourselves, but we wanted to complement our team with them and pool experience. We also brought on board WTI, Water Technologies Incorporated. It's extremely important that we have an expert in implementing outdoor pools. And so we brought them on board, and our team with Liggett and their team have worked together since 1993, so it was a good teaming of implementing projects. Currently, they're right now working on an aquatics study with the city of Columbus, 8 different pools and so forth. So we're bringing sort of a lot of experience to the table, but ultimately we'll be showcasing all of it for you to work with the recreation director to come up with the actual program that's going to go into the building. This sketch was, I just threw it in here. This was kind of the first sketch when I thought about this project. It was, we're familiar with Mayfield Heights a lot. I used to live on Eastwood Avenue a while ago, and my son, we used to watch him play baseball in those fields. So it's kind of like coming to fruition of working together to implement this project. But even today, I was driving from 271, and you come across Golden Gate Plaza. You see sort of the back end of the building, service and stuff, and then you come up to your service center, and then all of a sudden, it kind of with the trees, it opens up. There's the ball fields, but I thought about what an amazing opportunity that we're going to have to build kind of have this marker for Mayfield Heights right there on that site, and it's right off the freeway. And I was just looking at it today because I kind of wanted to experience that. And you kind of come around, there's trees, and it opens up, and I'm kind of calling it sort of like this oasis that we're going to create. It's a community center, it's a gathering center, and it also has this amazing outdoor recreation aquatic park that we're going to have. And it's really a great place to be a beacon to the community, and certainly all the traffic that goes up and down 271, especially southbound. This is the site plan and the considerations that we developed. We really wanted to incorporate lots of different things. Of course, 271, having that visibility, having a building, in this design, it's a one-story complex. It kind of spreads itself out, kind of embraces the aquatic park. But it also becomes a shield in a way from 271 and noise and any kind of clutter from the freeway. It sort of also becomes that stopping point before anything, noise pollution or whatever it is, gets to the pool. So we like that it sort of protects the pool from sound as well. And so that's kind of the main premise of why we had the arch. The other thing we wanted to do, and you can faintly see some arrows in here, some red arrows, we wanted to make sure from the existing park to the south that there was a direct connection, and you kind of see a beacon as well from the park and connectivity. So we included the water slides, if that's one of the modalities that we have in the aquatic park, that it's a tall structure, colorful, and that you see that from a park. So it's really kind of a guiding kind of light in the distance to head towards. We also have, from our soul, there's that bend in the road where it kind of wraps around. And right when you come around the bend, I wanted to make sure that we had a shot right between our buildings that we have. We have 2 structures that you actually see, once again, the water slides, the main entrance. So it was really sited such that it was right off that curve as well from that angle. So it really kind of locked itself into this site. And then, of course, we wanted to maximize parking, which is extremely important. And so that's why we really put the aquatics to the south and kept the parking to the east, and that gave us the ability to maximize the. We also, of course, about any building, you have to have service. So we have a service drive and a staff parking that's kind of on the 271 side. The next slide highlights some of those things I was just talking about, which was, you see blocking the noise from 271 and sort of that yellow curve with the, sure that we have a building that looks fantastic from that edge as well. So it really represents the community well and has an attractive flair to it on that side. And then we also had, go back one slide. We also have, you see that dashed blue area. How do we create better connectivity from the park? So we have some other ideas out there that we might be able to fold into the project where we can make a safer, more greener connection from the north side to the south side of Marsal. Go to the next one. So this kind of starts showing that imagery this is from the Marsal view. Now, of course, you're up in the air 100 feet, but it shows that direct access from when you bend around Marsal and you see the high structure, which is the front canopy, and it connects two buildings. The building to the right is the building that has concessions in it. It has the public restrooms, the changing rooms, things like that are in that. So it's functions that are, when the pool is in session or operating, that's that function. Then in the wintertime, whatever, that can be kind of closed down. And then to the left of that is and it's where you see that car in the foreground, it's just to the left of that, there's the community center entrance. We wanted it to have its own significant entrance. And the feature that you see, the largest structure, is the gym. There's a pair of gyms in the program initially, and we're gonna kind of explore that further to see the exact program that goes into the building. But that's kind of a high-level view overlooking the pool and the aquatic center and the community center. Closer in, we took a pass at laying out the pool area. And we have a lap pool, we have a diving area, we have a zero entry pool. We also have slides that we're showing as the aquatics focal point, as we're calling it. And we have a splash ground, which is the element C at the top in the light pale blue. And then we have a playground. And it was important that we had a playground, we had a walking trail, we had all these amenities, even concessions that you could get to from the outside of the sort of the paid entrance shared between inside and outside visitors as well. And then the floor plan, this is, we have some ideas that we brought forward as sort of a two-story scheme where the second story potentially had a way to have a continuation of the walking path, and you can go up and have a sort of observation platform. Maybe there's some green roofs. And it was kind of an idea to show how can we continue the walking path around and not go by the service yard. But it was just, once again, we were here to share some concepts, ideas, some creativity that we had. And the goal, as I always represented in all these meetings, was we need to develop a master plan of ideas, and not hold back with it. Master plan it out. It's easier to kind of take a large idea and kind of pare it down and shape it and mold it like clay than to take a small idea and then try to make it bigger. So when we presented this scheme, it was really our view of how to solve this complex building, because it has all these diverse program components, departments, conference rooms, and service, and to fit it all in. But basically, you'll see in the floor plan, the center image, there's an arrow that says community center entrance. So you come into a lobby, and to the right you have a small meeting room, and then we have the rec department, and the ticket area is number 10, which faces the aquatics main entrance. But then going down the hallway that has glass along its edge, so you can really look out at all time and orient yourself to the aquatic deck. But we had 2 basketball courts. We also had 3 meeting rooms of 1,500 square feet each room for 4,500 total, around 300 people if they were all opened up. And then we have the service side, which is number 7, 17, 18, 6 on the kind of the back side, which is the service dock, storage, pool equipment, kitchen as well on that back side. And you see the sort of the blue hallway that goes behind 4A, B, and C. That's sort of a service side for bringing in food or whatever or chairs and storage to the meeting rooms on kind of a back of house, backstage approach. Just an idea. 11 and 12, which are kind of in the middle, that's the lifeguard area and first aid, kind of right at the fulcrum center of the aquatic side, but yet connected to the main building, kind of to make sure there's some connectivity there. This is the images on one of the board. This is our idea of the front entrance. You have this large canopy that is the connector between a couple buildings. once again, you can kind of see right through it to see the slides or whatever tall apparatus that we may have here. We have that community room, that's that first glass kind of room. You know, we were even talking at one of our last meetings, sort of a kickoff meeting, about that could even be a room that, you know, there could be birthday parties in, it could be rented out, but it's really a showcase kind of space right in the front, because we always want to show activity and show it being, the facility being used, and really have a, you know, a very active presentation to the community. This is a view from the south side looking north over the pool area, the aquatics area, trying to get a lot of sunshade canopies. And you can kind of see what I was talking about on the right side, first floor. You can see that glassy sort of area. That was that long yellow corridor that went around the community center, such that you're always sort of oriented in seeing the activity of the pool. We thought that was a nice way to express the architecture as well as creating the connectivity. And this is, go ahead, Christopher. So this one is right adults from all wide range. So we need to appeal to all of the demographics that may use the building. This is sort of inside the hallway, walking along the corridor, and what that view is, I was talking about looking out. This just shows a nice glass hallway there. And once again, looking over the pool deck again. Just some different views. And this is the view from the park, heading, if you're walking, going north, that connectivity I was talking about, going through the sort of the parking area. Then there's Marsol, and there's the, you know, the playground and the splash ground with that frog that you kind of maybe see there, and then you see the slides behind it. And just another aerial looking east from the west addition of the activity, kind of that oasis I was talking about, this, you know, beautiful park setting with the aquatic deck, with landscaping, a building that integrates and works in conjunction with the aquatic architecture. And then you see 271 in the distance, and how that building kind of, you know, kind of shrouds the aquatic deck from 271, but yet with the gym, the two-story gym and other tall features, we can really be an excellent billboard for the community with signage or the architecture as well. So, I'm sure there's lots of questions, but
Mm.
can we show one more thing before? Do you want to go to, we'll show the video. There's a video, quick video. Not many people dressed for pool, but you know, all the people we can. There's a
lunch
few,
break.
There's a few in the water. We even had some lighting effects because, you know, once again, I think from a fun standpoint, you know, in the dusk times, you can have lighting effects. You can have, you know, there could be music, all kinds of things. There you go. Thank you.
It's very nice. Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to council questions. Mr. Balistreo.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. I like the conception. I just have a few questions. Of course, I'm not an architect, but I'm thinking as in terms of the community as a whole. And when I'm looking at your plan, I think we're lacking in shaded areas for the residents. There are going to be a lot of mothers and babies that are going to want to sit in lounge chairs under shaded areas. That's one of my concerns that I see in the conception. And I realize it is a conception. The second is you don't show any type of seating or lounge chairs or in your plan, so it's hard to conceive, you know, where a lot of people are going to sit. And so I think maybe we need to add that, you know, how, you know, lounge chairs and seating would fit with your plan. The third thing is I'm kind of half-heartedly looking at the pool, and I'm saying we've got a big area with two big umbrella shades that I think, why can't that pool be bigger? Why do we need those areas and just maximize our space for pool area? To me, it seems like a lot of wasted space. I know architecturally it looks neat, and maybe that's the architect's design, but in reality, I want to get the most bang for the buck for the residents, and that's to have people be able to swim freely, to float, not have somebody, if somebody's floating, be splashing them, to have the most surface area for the pool as we can, and still have enough seating and shaded areas for everybody. And again, I'm not an architect, so maybe, I'm not seeing the whole picture, but that's just some things that come to my mind. And then the last thing I had was, if we're gonna spend the money, and we've talked about it, amongst ourselves, all for doing a two-story building. If we can swing the finances, this is the time that we do it right, and we do it now, in the conceptual plan, and all agreed to go up 2 stories. So that's my 2 cents worth, as a representative of the community. And maybe you can just address some of those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. The shade structures and having shade, we saw certainly in the community survey that was done, that shade was like had the most overwhelming amount of agreement on. So we agree with that, and of course, we will design and plan that in appropriately. And even landscape areas, grass areas, and things like that, because it's all, on the aquatic decks, with all the concrete, it's very warm and hot. So we want to make sure we create those spaces. As far as the pool deck furnishings, yes, of course, we will have all that. We actually had a meeting just this last week, and we talked about how many people potentially could be at the facility, and it's a lot. And it's based on the size of the pools and a whole bunch of other dynamics of the aquatic deck. And so we will definitely have to, that's part of our team. We have interior designers and other folks that specialize in the outdoor furniture as well as interior furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we will address all of that. Of course, we did a 2-week charrette to come up with what you see, and those details are something that we look forward to really diving into in the months ahead, and we will make sure, that's at the top of the list. And then as far as the 2-story structure, we've thought a lot about that. I think it was the first presentation where Don was, that was one of his comments, and I came in with a 1-story scheme, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, we've already, but the point is, you have to, and we talked about this last week as well, we really have to look at the program and what could go up in a 2-story, or have the building that it can be built up upon in the future, so we're not short-sighted. A 2-story building does leave more site footprint for vertical or horizontal expansion, or more aquatic programs. So it is smart to be thinking that way. But from the program that we have to date, you have meeting rooms, and we have to think about their connectivity on the first floor and accessibility and not doing elevators, and connectivity to the kitchen, let's say, so there could be easy service. Basketball courts, we would never put up on the 2nd level just because of the size, and elevating that up even higher would cost so much. So then what it leads down to is office program and some other things that maybe we haven't come up with yet. But we did talk about either the whole story could be 2 stories, or part of it could be 2 stories, but it was definitely part of our conversation, and we're gonna explore that. We also have to look at the soils in this location and to make sure that they are suitable for what we might promote. So those are all the things that we will be getting into and look forward to. The third thing you asked, there was one more question you asked.
Larger pool.
Oh, the larger pool
Well,
size.
it's a cost factor, of course, and there are so many options, and we presented a bunch last week of anywhere from, slides and there's so many different options. What we're putting together is a matrix of options, and this goes with the building program too, and their relative costs. So if we need to be 5.3 million for the aquatic deck, that we stick to that. If we're 5.6 million for the building, these are the programs can fit in there, or these are things we can shell, or can be future expansion, or phased. But we're really trying to be mindful of the $14,425,000 construction budget and the $17.1 million project budget. So we keep all those things in mind, and it's how you all want to spend the 5.3 million for the aquatic and do a lazy river and goes into it. There are so many options, but we're going to show you the price tags to be very careful that we don't go forward with a design and then have to step backwards because it's over budget. So we'll incrementally go and we'll say, hey, we're at the threshold. These are your desires. This is the budget threshold. You certainly could make a decision to put more funds into it, but from our perspective and GPT's perspective, we are sticking to the budget until otherwise. That's what we need to be mindful of the whole time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. DeJohn Ware.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay.
With people occupying the community part, how do you keep children safe from the pool?
Well, I think that's from a security standpoint, number one, is something that we're gonna have to do to make sure that there's those mechanisms that don't let you go out to the pool. Or, as I was even educated, if you have any type of, and this may be the thing, that you can go outside, but there's another set of fencing that, so that you can't go into the pool. Just like if it was a pool in your backyard, you have to have fencing around it. The same way if you go out, but everything has to be monitored and controlled. And today, I don't have the specific example in our design of how we're gonna do it, but that's like top of the list to make sure we figure out, because you do have a lot of liability here with all different entrances and a lot of access.
And will you be coming back to us with a final plan?
I'll be coming back as many times as I'm asked to come back. I'd love to present and to show progress.
So, do we know that? Are we gonna, I'd hate to be saying, okay, yeah, go ahead based on this conceptual plan and then never hear from anybody again.
No, that would happen.
I think that was part of the conversation that we were hoping to have today, is to find out what frequency you would like us to have us back. I mean, at minimum, what we would have Chris do is at the end of every design milestone. So, traditionally, you've got programming, schematic design, design development, CDs. At those major milestones, we would come back and provide an update to you. That may be, depending on some of the durations, 2 months, every other month. But we could certainly come back once a month if you'd like. But that's certainly something that we would value some input on.
And just one more question or comment, I guess. Charlie Draga, that's the name of the pool there. He's a legend in this community, donated a lot of his time in the summer. That's why the pool was named after him. Mayor Ross DeJohn, who was mayor here for 28 years, he had to beg, borrow, and steal to get his community center built. Have you thought about where these people's names will go on this facility?
Yeah, yes, we've thought so much about it that we have a consultant on board that specializes in signage and wayfinding to make this definitely a facility that is not just an afterthought with signage and plaques and those kind of things, that is integrated into the design. And certainly we have opportunities with the entrance to the aquatic area or the entrance to the community center to have different moments that those individuals are able to be celebrated.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 1 second, okay. Can we go back to the slide that had all of the numbers and what all the rooms were?
Sure, we'll go back to the
Thanks.
floor plans.
Thank you. So I see like 4, A, B, and C, those are meeting rooms, and the kitchen is number 6. So if we were having, if someone was renting the facility, where would they enter to go down to that area?
They would enter up above 9, the purple area, the 2 gymnasiums. They would enter at the front entrance where it says 1.
And then walk outside?
They would walk inside from that area and go down that yellow corridor, that public corridor down the hallway.
Those rooms?
We discussed, well, what's the image you want to see? Do you want to see gym activity when you first come in that business? Or do you want to have meeting rooms initially? And that's the kind of thing we're going to get through. Even though we were presenting a plan here, we have to test it with you. We did this in a silo without anyone's input. So those are the kind of questions that we're going to kind of banter back and forth.
Yeah, because if someone wanted to have, there are Highland Heights, for example, and has a lovely area where they have fundraisers and parties, and so they have a huge kitchen, and you just walk into a pretty foyer and then go into these rooms. And I'm just wondering, if you walk in by number 1, and are you going to walk past a gym where they're
In this
playing
design, yes, you
basketball.
will, but, there'd be windows, you'd see it, but you'd walk past it. And then if you look in front of 4A, B, and C, the yellow area is wider because with those events, sometimes you open the doors and there's food set out on tables and there's different things. That's sort of at the end of the hall, and there aren't people going to play basketball going through where you're going in and out and going to the restrooms, number 3. So we have reasons the way it is, but there's also reasons it could be other ways, and that's what we're going to test with you in detail.
Yeah, and then, and just, yeah, again, number 6 is the kitchen, and you have a mechanical room, number 18 right there. Is that going to be,
It's perfect because all the infrastructure for a kitchen, the hoods, the power, the electrical is right there. If we move the kitchen further away, it's further away from the service dock to get food into it and trash out of it. But we like to combine those kind of like functions together at that sort of back house, because a kitchen does not need to be showcased anywhere, but it's a behind-the-scenes kind of thing in our view at the moment, unless there's something else that brings a reason to put it to the forefront.
okay, thank you.
So, thank you, because those are some of the questions I had. So I personally would like to see one of those meeting rooms be larger and possibly 2 smaller ones. I'm comparing them to other community centers that I've done catering out of in different events. And because not always, people do need a larger room and some people just need a smaller room. I also think that if you're having an event and it's a big deal, sharing a kitchen with 2 other events, maybe I'm having a little mini wedding reception or a bridal shower, but there's a 16th birthday party going on in the other room. I don't know that I would like to have that shared kitchen, especially in the location that it is. Visually, it seems too far away from maybe the first meeting room or the second meeting room. It's not like that's not syncing well with me. And I also think that, and maybe you have this in the plan, whereas you would have a door to the kitchen, a separate entrance, because a lot of times when you do have catering coming in or people having parties, you don't want to bring all that stuff in through that beautiful front entrance. You would want not tracking it down the hall. So that service door you were talking about, I believe I wrote down, and possibly a service entrance.
Yeah, where you see 6 on the plan, that is it's along the outside of the building. That's where the service dock is. So any materials, supplies, food comes in that side. And then you see the blue corridor, that's all back of house hallway, and it's right adjacent to 4A, 4B, 4C. So the kitchen is right next to all of that. It's not connected to them. In the program, there were kitchenettes that were initially considered for each of those spaces, but it is immediately adjacent and kind of a typical arrangement that you might see in conference centers and community centers. The 4A, B, and C arrangement can handle 3 different scenarios. Where you see the dashed lines, it can open up into 1 large room, it can open up to, or it can have 3 small rooms, or it can have 1/3 and 2/3. So it has that dynamic to be all those different sizes, but we thought of also maybe that there is maybe 1 smaller one, or it can even be divided 1 more time. But we will have a lot of flexibility into those rooms.
And my other question is what can our community room do to stand out amongst the other community rooms in the area? Just different. Outdoor fire pit, indoor fire, something different that makes people, like it'd be a wow. What can we do differently to make our community room a wow? Not just a typical meeting room, but somewhere that someone would really want to rent our room for a special occasion.
I think it has a lot to do with the amenity of the aquatic deck that's right there, and a space right outside those glass windows that you can, recess and break outside. Maybe it's in that fenced area that is, you're not in the pool area, but you're out in that pool environment with all the trees and the shades and all those different things, that environment with the music and some lighting and things like that. That's how I see we need to capitalize on what's right next to it as one idea. And then on that corridor that's there is to really make sure that interior is a great welcoming, space there as well. But we'll be able to answer that as we go along a little further when we dive deeper into the project.
And then finally, the size of the playground. I'm super excited about the splash ground. I've been wanting that for years. You all know that. So I'm super excited about that, but the image of the actual playground, it doesn't look real big. So I was just wondering, like size-wise, in comparison to, Sure.
This is the model of the project, and
That visual person.
yeah, a little mini model, but you can see the playground right in your foreground. And I think it is too small right now. I think that was a comment made the other day that we need to make sure that we,
Yeah.
right size that. Or, as I say, as we look at the budget, we need to make sure that it can be phased and expanded. If the dollars are from the line, have to keep, we can't, always flexible, we can expand.
That's neat. Thank you.
I have some questions.
Anna?
Thank you. One of the main concerns I've heard about the pool being on that side is obviously the dirt and the traffic and the noise of the freeway. And I know you mentioned a wall, but is that going to guarantee us, because I've heard from other people, even Mrs. Sabetta said the walls are just black and filthy. Is that going to keep debris from going in the pool and also the noise factor? That's one question, and then I have another one. Go ahead.
Well, we have also on our team, we have an acoustics consultant that is going to help us answer the question on a lot of what you asked. Certainly, there's several things that are critical, is the freeway noise and the building blocking that from the pool deck, the aquatic deck. Two is we have neighbors that are right there to the west, and we need to make sure that we keep the noise as controlled as possible for there. We might do berming, and there's trees along that edge, and and we're 70 feet away, but still, if we have elevated slides and stuff, noise travels. So we need to make sure that we have a landscape buffer, maybe some berming and things like that. And of course, we have a fence that we're going to have that goes all the way around. That'll be kind of higher as possible. As far as the debris, the freeway is right there, but it's to me, with the building adjacent to block that noise and the trash, I think that it'll be a great barrier, but then it's also that opportunity, like I said, to be a marker for this building. But I don't see that as an issue with trash. Of course, things blow and float and they go anywhere, but I think a pool deck, if you think about it, leaves and debris, they're going to be scouring that pool deck and cleaning the pool from, there's trees neighboring. So I think the issue more is with the foliage and being careful that we have the right planting materials that would cause the dirtiness of a pool deck area versus litter off the freeway. That's my perception of it. But until we execute the design and go through these process of studying all those things, we won't know. But our goal is in mind that we have to protect this building and make sure it's as clean as possible. And I think that's about having low maintenance materials that we use and being very cognizant of those issues. But we design hospitals and buildings all along the freeway, and it's the best locations to put those buildings because they are such markers in the community.
My other question was about parking. I know there's not a lot of parking there now, and when your pictures, it showed a lot. So how are you moving for the bottom of the field and pulling the parking out, or how's that going to work?
Well, we are, the current community center has, I'll say 40 to 50 spaces or whatever. We are taking up, that's going to be torn down is in the plan, and that's where the service yard will be, service center. We're going to kind of move into that area, but I can tell you we're maximizing the parking that we can fit on the site, and certainly need to meet all the zoning requirements. But we have not done a formal parking study, but GPD and past studies have kind of concluded where the parking counts need to be, and we're going to try to maximize. But as you can see, the parking is very regular, rectangular, and it's really optimal as much as possible. And we also are including sort of a drop-off lane so that you can drop off for accessibility, for handicap accessibility and convenience, and pickup. We're including that as well. But we really have to count these parking spaces, try to maximize it, make sure we have enough. As you see, maybe you can see there's shaded squares up there. That's the striping area for handicap parking right at the front. And then across the north side of Marceau, incorporating, thinking all of that is kind of part of this, the counts. But
I do agree with Mrs. Snyder that the park should be a nice park, looking at like Mayfield Village or Lyndhurst both have newer ones. Something more to that extreme.
now, one thing we proposed, and that's in that blue dashed ellipse area, was there is a parking lot right there where I show that green area, but we want to make sure that pedestrians coming north or south from from the current pool, coming this direction, they can cross and they don't have to go through drive lanes of parking lots to get across the road. So, that doesn't promote more parking, it takes away, but it's safety and security is also important. So we're gonna have to find the right balance. And like I said, this is a first pass, but all this good critique and these comments are something that's gonna fuel what we do in the months ahead.
Mr. Trotta, I have a question about back where the staff parking along that portion of the highway. Why can't we do some form of a grass mound like they've done in Highland Heights and some of those developments? I know there's high retention wires, but if we kept the level low enough that we wouldn't interfere with the retention wires, that might help a little bit, and also use it as a buffer.
Yeah, I think we have to look at from the property line and the setbacks, what we can achieve. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers, but the freeway is almost quite level. Maybe it's 10 feet higher. It's an interesting dynamic between the two. I think one good thing is that we have the service dock, we have staff parking. We don't have visitor parking back there. That's kind of the back of the house. So if anything, and if there was any litter or things that come off there, or some noise, these are programs and parking areas that are not high tangible spaces for the community. This is sort of more back of house, even though we don't want the architecture to look that way, but we're not putting an activity back there. We're really putting that on the other side, so that's deliberate.
The other question I have was possibly for you or GPD group. That area in the back corner is possibly a wetlands area. If they do, are they going to plan on looking into that now that it's not winter? They can go back and see if it's really truly wetlands. And also, if it is, maybe we can work with Euclid Creek or Chagrin Watershed to do something kind of cool with the wetlands area back there. Maybe they can help with the program.
So I did take a look at the wetlands report that we did as part of our site due diligence package, and they did have sufficient information to confirm the extent of it. Part of what was noted in that report, though, is if we do get to the point where we are close to disturbing those wetlands, we would then come out and delineate the extent of those wetlands so that they can be properly marked and to ensure that they are not disturbed as part of the construction activities. But if we, as Chris is currently showing, and we propose as part of our due diligence, if we maintain sufficient distance from that, the extent of the wetlands, then there's no permitting or issues associated with the wetlands. They can just maintain as they are.
Okay, Mrs. Dressy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Trotter, just a couple things. It looked like in one of the conceptual drawings, like outside looked like wood, kind of like slats of, like that. But is it going to be wood? Is it going to be, is the community building going to be brick? What are you using for the?
We don't know yet.
Oh.
But we think, of course, we're going to build, we have to be very careful these days with building materials due to COVID and shortages of materials, whether it's bar joist for ceiling roofs or it's, wood, whatever it is, we got to be very careful. So we'll work with the construction manager to figure out what are the best materials. But from an economic standpoint, we're looking at a building that's between, $172 a foot to $190 a foot. We want to keep it in that range. So there'll be masonry. I imagine there'll be some corrugated panels. Inside, I think like the meeting rooms will have nice ceilings like this, except other areas may be open to the structure, painted ceilings and a more progressive look to it. The exterior texture was just to show that we wanted a color in some way, a warmer feeling. That could be done in masonry. It could be done in all kinds of different materials. We have to, pros and cons of costs, but this is more of a feeling we wanted to convey of a welcoming and being a little bit warmer and really clean and a modern look to it. We were really trying to kind of breach that point of familiarity with modern.
So did you say that the existing community building is going to belong to the service department? Or is the existing community building going to be torn down?
Torn down.
Torn down.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with Mr. Balistrea about a two-story building, just because when I see those 3 meeting rooms, if you have someone that's using 2/3, like there are many times currently where we have 12 women from one organization, and they're in that big room that we have, and you have 15 women doing yoga in this teeny little room, you wouldn't have room to do another meeting.
Yeah, I think,
You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking already, with all of the activities that go on in the evening in our community building now, we wouldn't, excuse me, we wouldn't have enough room to split up and do yoga in one room or crafts in another room and then have an event.
yeah, so maybe we have to add, and maybe that's on a second level, as I said, as a portion, that there are some smaller rooms, and maybe they're not the rooms that, open up to bigger rooms, but they're just very dedicated rooms for, if that's a concern, we need to create a lot of multi-purpose spaces.
And how did we come up with $14,425,000 as the budget?
They're just maybe GPT, it's just a preliminary budget.
So as part of that due diligence package that we performed, we did do a budgetary estimate, and it was based on a square foot total. We applied a contingency to that, since we don't have any sort of real design determined at that point, and so that's the number that we developed, and that was what was presented early on. But I guess if there's additional funds that we feel like might be available, that would certainly help Chris's cause.
So I just have a
Happy to
question.
have those
So
funds.
if this is like this rendition is a $18 million rendition, what would the $14 million, like, I don't know,
Well, that we
like,
act-
what we're going to get for $14 million is what I'm asking.
Actually, to be transparent, we actually did a cost estimate study of this, and, 18, 19 million is this all-in project for this one, for this design. And that's the challenge that my friend Jason put before us and said, make this work in the budget. And that's what we always face. Every project I have faced for 30 years has been, here's the budget and here's the appetite. And it's about making the two meet. And most of the time, it's no more money, work with this. But in this case, with the aquatic budget and the building budget, we're going to have to pick and choose we're going to try to, like for the building example, we're going to put costs per the different, like a menu of, these are all the program components you want. Here's the cost per square foot, and here's what they equate to. So we say, look, if you want those additional meeting rooms and for the flexibility, well, okay, that's fine, but I would sit there in front of the steering committee and say, well, what do you want to get rid of? And what, we have to balance and weigh, because I have to keep this in check. But I'm also learning some priorities from a lot of things I've heard. I've heard two-story, I've heard meeting spaces, flexibility, and all of that. Well, do you need 2 basketball courts? And we discussed this last week, and we really need 1 basketball court and 2 sort of side courts for volleyball and some other things, so we can kind of reduce that. And then maybe we can add things you're saying. But that's the kind of checks and balances we're going to go through in this programming and planning phase, which is a 5 to 6 week process. And we're not going to get out of this phase until we have a budget and a program and a quality level that matches before then we go into the next phase, and then the next phase. So, and those are the increments we can get back in front of you, where you can call me out and say, hey, remember I said about shade, or I said about the yoga room, or this and that, what did you do? And I have to answer for that, so.
I have a question for you and GPD. Have you ever gone out for any type of a grant that might help fund some of this park or this area?
I think our team with Leggett Architects as a partner have done that before, and could be very helpful in that process.
Okay.
I think we have some team members that could enter into those conversations with you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tressi?
So the last time we did a pool was 60 years ago, so chances are we're not going to do it for another 60 years. Many of us may not be here. Then again, maybe a few will. But nonetheless, we want to make sure we do it right, that young people moving into our community have what all these other communities have, and maybe better. But we want to do it right, make sure we cross every T, dot every I, and give the young families moving in, you know, a fabulous place to come, you know, enjoy the summer. I mean, we only have 3 months of summer, so.
Well, and it's important, as even I was educated a little bit by WTI, our consultant, where they said that you need to have activities that are from the youngest to adults, that they all can participate. So the continuum of transition of experience levels and of age, that you can enjoy the facility. So that's what we need to, and we did an exercise last week. We're looking at, you know, beginner things, medium, and sort of the black diamond, kind of like the tough, you know, the stuff that will challenge, you know, adults and children. And there's so many things out there that we're going to look at, a lot of fun things. And then a way that we can adapt the pool or add apparatus or a climbing wall in the pool or different things you can, you know, bring in the future or take out. And, you know, because once you build a pool, the pool is there. You know, it's there's not much flexibility with that. But there are so many accoutrements to a pool that you can do to make it change over time. Yeah.
Madam,
Mrs. Sabetta.
thank you. My question here mostly is for the seniors. I mean, we are very equipped here for all the young families and 20s, 30s, 40s, but seniors start at 60 plus. So I did see a lot of shade area. I know there's going to be a pavilion type put in, and I just want to see more senior aquatics and more the paths. I love all the walking paths, how wide they are, you know, in your sketches, and I want to thank you for taking care of that. As my colleague mentioned, I'm Mrs. Sabetta, and I stated that I was for the building being where it is because I live backed up to 271, and before the barrier went up, our homes, our yards, yes, a lot of it was kicked up. And with the barrier, it is not any longer. Our homes stay cleaner. We do not get the type of debris that we used to get. The sound does hit the barrier and pitch up, but you get used to it.
So you still have the noise, you still hear the freeway.
You can still hear the freeway, more because they put in that express lane. I've been there for 41, and my husband's been there over 50. So I feel that the building being the buffer is the right way to go with this. Also, my house is a ranch, so I don't have 2 stories, but with 2 stories, I'd like to see, again, for seniors, disability, handicap, an elevator. So I know that's something you'd have to budget in there.
Correct. We would, actually, I'd probably have to put 2 elevators in, because an elevator, well, if you have meeting rooms and so forth, and you all exit or come at the same time, you don't want to be waiting for elevators. But if one goes down, it's always good to have that backup.
Thank you. And by the way, this is a beautiful beginning.
Thank you.
It's a wow.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding is the gym area, and I'm not sure of our director's vision for, you know, 2 full basketball courts. But my question is, and my understanding is, this could also be used as a rental area for folks to utilize for a party or something like that. Maybe not a wedding, but something else that they don't really care about the ambiance. But you don't have the kitchen connecting all the way down to the gym.
We do have a corridor that connects all the way down to the
I see
gym.
it stopping there at the
That's a chair.
service.
And chair and table storage room that's right there.
Yeah, if you went
But
back to that picture with the
Yeah.
blue area
Yeah, so-
behind the meeting rooms, I'm assuming that's a service area to service those those rooms, but that doesn't go all the way down to the gymnasium.
It can, of course, it could, we
Okay.
could continue that on, and I think that would be smart to do. Now, the gymnasium, we have to be careful of what type of floor do we put in, because the traffic with street shoes and everything and events could mess it up, or you need to have a multi-purpose type of floor that can accommodate that. So I think we really need to know those intentions. So we don't put in this beautiful maple floor, raised sleepers, and then all of a sudden it's wrecked.
I mean, you want to get the most bang for the buck, and if you're going to use that as a multi-purpose area, then yeah, then that's something we definitely would need to consider.
And we also have to be cognizant of the more spaces we program for assembly or a large amount of people, the larger the restrooms have to be. So every desire that you have has a cause and an effect. And that's the same way with the pool, aquatic pool deck. We need through planning and zoning, we need to make sure in the code, the International Building Code, that we make sure that we understand the volume of folks that are going to be utilizing the pool and the building at the same time as well could be, and then make sure we have enough restrooms. And that's going to be one of the larger cost spaces is the restrooms of this facility. You know, and the kitchen is really important. These have a high plumbing demand and infrastructure to facilitate those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does any member of council have any more questions at this time? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chada and Chris Chada.
Thank you.
And from the GPD group for the presentation, this beautiful facility. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestrea, second by Mrs. Tressi. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This meeting is now adjourned. It is 7 o'clock. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's July 12th council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Balstria,
Present.
Mr. DeJohn,
Here.
Mrs. Finney.
Here.
Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Here?
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our council meeting, June 28th. I hope everyone has had time to read these minutes over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mrs. Finney, second by Mr. Balestrea. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to those minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye. These minutes have been approved. Next, we'll move to correspondence and announcements. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. I had several conversations with residents from Ascot and Marnell over the last week, and they were told, at least one of them through somebody else told me that they were told that we have funds. I guess Mrs. Sabetta told them we have funds set aside for sewer work, and being on Public Works, I was unaware of that, so I don't know who I should be asking, Mrs. Fagan or whoever.
I'd be more than happy to address that. We have a sanitary sewer fund, and that was part of the budget for 2021, where we encumbered some of those funds to be used for GPD to do their sewer study, and that is where those funds are coming from, and there are remaining monies in that fund when the study is finalized and we know the cost of what needs to be done to move forward.
But not 1.8 million, right?
I don't know what we need to fix that area at this point in time. So I know there's not 1.8 million there, but I don't know what we would need to address the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments from council? Seeing none, we'll move to reports of officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Just a reminder that August 6th, we're going to have our first responder night in the park. I want to make sure everybody keeps that date in mind. It's always a good event to see the first responders and show them our support and for them to get out and meet the residents. We will join 85 other communities as a drop-off location for aluminum cans to support the Aluminum Cans for Burn Children campaign. The campaign helps support the everyday needs of children and their families. The collection container will be located in the rear parking lot behind City Hall. We have a couple new businesses that opened in the city, Crafty Crab, which is the former Fridays location, and Mayfield Academy of Self-Defense, which is in the Ranchland Plaza. It's always good to see new businesses opening. And then I had the privilege of to be part of the groundbreaking June 30th for the new Lozic Cancer Pavilion being constructed at Hillcrest Hospital. The pavilion will provide quality care and services to patients and their families. Roads update, Ashcroft. The contractor is removing curbs and aprons are about 25% complete. Gates Mills Boulevard, the street will receive another layer of asphalt and striping, and the project should be completed within 2 weeks. Wharton, the contractor and city engineer have notified and met with residents, and the construction should begin shortly. And then road work on Bonnie Lane, Bonnie Place, Geesey, Golden Gate, Parker, and Eastwood has begun, and that progress is going well. And the sidewalk program, we're anticipating that to begin in August. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Law Director, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of things to note for the agenda. First of all, there is a substitute agenda, which was at everybody's place, that added, excuse me, 2 motions from the Planning Commission meeting Thursday night regarding the preliminary and final plans for 2 businesses looking to move into the city. And that will be taken, well, when we get to that portion of the agenda. Secondly, there is a substitute resolution number 2021-59, which would be authorizing the agreement with Level Heads. The price has changed, and there is a revised proposal dated June 25th, 2021, and the revised price is, if I can find it here, $1,282,171. And that revised resolution, along with the proposal, was at your places this evening. Finally, I would request that there be a motion to add resolution number 2021-63, which is with regard to declaring Longwood to be a nuisance and authorizing it be torn down. The original resolution was for $15,000, and it will take closer to $20,000 because of the presence of asbestos in the burned-out shell of the house. I had sent around a memo dated July 9th outlining the reason for the increase, so we'll need to do an additional resolution, and that's would be resolution number 2021-63, which was also at your places this evening. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for the Law Director? Okay, Director of Finance, Mrs. Fagan.
Thank you. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Fagan. We will now move to reports to committees, commissions, and boards, starting with the Building Committee, Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Building Committee has not met, therefore I have no report.
Thank you. Finance and Audit Committee, Mr. Balistreo.
Thank you. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Legislative Committee, Mrs. Finney.
Thank you, I have no report.
Thank you. Public Works and Service, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. The mayor gave my report unless Mr. Gerson has anything else to say.
Mr. Gerson.
Thank you.
Dan Gerson, City Engineer. I do have a couple things on the road program. Everything was accurate. Just wanted to let residents know to bear with us. Obviously, it's been having a lot of rain, which is slowing down paving. On Ashcroft, all the curbs and drive aprons will be replaced. Once that's done, then asphalt will be added on to fill in the gap from there. On Bonnie Lane, Geesey, all the streets that are asphalt now. Once we already have a first layer of asphalt on Bonnie, Golden Gate, Geesey, then we're going to go in and do the concrete repair, curb repairs. There'll be a final asphalt on there, so that'll be the same with Eastwood and Parker. I also wanted to kind of give you a quick update on the mainline dye testing that we did for the Ascot and Marnell area. I'd like to request a Public Works Committee to go ahead and give kind of a more detailed report, but I want to kind of give you a summary. I'll speak while it gets going. Anyway, so last year we were authorized to do mainline dye testing on approximately 19,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewer and storm sewer in what we call the Ascot area as one side, and we loosely say the Marnell area on the other side. So that includes other streets, but the reason I classify them as Ascot and Marnell is just because they're separated systems. In other words, what goes in Ascot doesn't travel to Marnell. What goes in Marnell doesn't travel to Ascot area. We had AECom as our subconsultant that did the mainline dye testing. They were able to complete the work, and they've provided a report. If you remember, what we looked at is we were trying to find out, when you do a mainline dye test, you basically simulate a storm event. And so what we were trying to do is find areas where water was in the storm sewer and was getting into the sanitary and causing the sanitary to back up into people's basements. We were able to do that. On the Ascot area, there were actually, through my notes real quick, there were 30 sections of sanitary sewer that were tested. So essentially a section would be from a manhole to a manhole. And of those 30 sections, 5 of those sections exhibited dye transfer from the storm sewer into the sanitary sewer. So what they did is they blocked up the storm sewer, filled it with dyed water, and then ran a camera down the sanitary sewer to see where there was dyed water coming in. Of those 5 areas, or 5 sections, if you count, and what they were able to do is when they saw the dye, they were able to make an estimate as to how much water was coming in per gallons per minute. If you add up all those areas, you had approximately 52 gallons per minute coming in of those 5 areas. Sounds like a lot, but in the realm of things, it's really not. There were a couple, and of those areas, there were 2 or 3 spots that were relatively high, which would be problem areas that you'd want to take care of. Other areas, when they showed a dye, they would show you dye if you had something less than a gallon per minute coming in. They'd still flag it as a concern where the dye was coming in. On the Marnell area, there were 52 sections that they were able to dye test. And again, that's manhole to manhole. And of that, 9 of those sections exhibited dye coming in. And if you add up all those, that was 44 gallons per minute. So, is it working yet? If it isn't, we can kind of talk through it. So on the Ascot area, we were able to do all of the contributing sanitary sewer to the area to where the Roselawn pump station is. So in that area, we know for certain that in that case, there's not a lot of public sanitary repair areas that need done. There are some of those 5. We'll have that. We'll look for going forward repairing those. But what that tells you is it tells you that the infiltration or the clean water is not getting in the sanitary sewer from the public storm. There's one other place, and that would be private property. And again, you remember what happens, and I know we have some residents here, but what happens is when it rains, they get basement flooding. When it doesn't rain, they generally don't get basement flooding. And so when that sanitary backs up with clean water, it's sized to handle non-clean water, and that's when you get the backups. In the Marnell area, we did basically, I'll name off the streets because the visual is not working, but we did dye testing on Byron, Mayfair, Gilbert, Hawthorne, Mayberry, Mayflower, and then on the north side, it was Mallard and the north side in Mayfair, and I think Circle Drive was also in there. So we did a lot of dye testing. Certain areas came up worse than others, and we had 9 sections in there, all of which can be repaired. But in that case, it's a little bit different because what we didn't do is we didn't do mainline dye testing on Lander, which contributes, and just because we weren't finding flooding on Lander like we were on Marnell, so we're trying to focusing down on where we found the areas.
Hey,
And then
Dan.
we also didn't
Dan, real quick, we
Go ahead.
can see it, even though you can't
Oh,
see it
oh,
up there.
okay, I can't
We
see
could
it
see
up
it on our monitors, so.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you see that one then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't help the audience, but basically the green areas are areas that we completed per the contract as we were planning on doing. And then the pink areas would all be contributing to basically down here on Temple where that outlet all comes out. So everything in the pink and the green comes down to where my finger is at Temple and Mayfield Road. So again, we found if you go 9 divided by 52, it's roughly about 17%, somewhere in there. 17% of the sewers exhibited some infiltration. And in that case, we had a lot of very small numbers, so that's why there was a higher number. And we didn't have a whole lot of spots that contributed very large gallons. I think the highest one on that section, I believe, was like 14 gallons per minute, which those you'd want to repair for sure, because, again, these are estimates that the operator of the camera is looking at and saying, okay, they have a kind of a section, if you see, they call them drippers, they call them gushers type things that tell you kind of a range. And obviously, depending on how bad the storm would be, those numbers would be up or down. Again, we're simulating a storm, we're flooding the manhole, but it's only for a certain period of time. So those areas that we found, what my proposal would be is the Cuyahoga Department of Utilities has a contract with us where they collect fees from the residents to do maintenance on our storm and sanitary, and they have an existing fund. I've reached out to the county to go ahead and review the results that we have and give us a price to either do those repairs in-house, which would come out of those funds, or they also have a standing contract with a contractor to do lining. I know they did some grouting before on those streets, but to do those repairs and then give us a price before we do it, and we can authorize that work to be done. In the Marnell area, what I'd suggest, and just try to, again, we're looking for the problem, and then once we know the problem, then we can come up with a solution. What I'd like to do is to go ahead and do the mainline dye testing on Temple, Longwood, Mayland, and Lander. Roughly, that's about 12,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewer. To give you an idea, we did 19,000. I believe the contract was 130-some thousand, so my guess is you're probably, to do that dye testing, you're probably around 60 to 75,000 to get that done. And what that does, it's a lot of money we're spending to try to find out the problems. But you remember when we started this, before we did the mainline dye testing, if we would have just gone in and blindly lined every pipe that in green that we showed, we were looking at estimates probably 3 to 5 million just to line those pipes. And unfortunately, if we would have gone ahead and done that, we would have spent 3 to 5 million and really not solved the problem. And so I think that's the first step. That's what I would suggest. That's one of the things I would talk with the Public Works Committee. The second thing that we've got to look at is, if they're not in the public sewers, if the problem's not in the public sewers, then there's another contributing factor, and that's in the private. And that becomes the difficulty, is trying to find where those problems are, because first of all, they're private property, so getting on private property to try to find those areas. And then, of course, fixing the problems. And generally speaking, what you see is it's downspouts that contribute to the sanitary sewer, either by a direct connection, not on purpose. Generally, we see it was done, they found a pipe, they connected to it, they thought it was a sanitary, and we see this out of plumbers. Or you see, just like you see in a public sewer, is you see the lines are together, there's a break from one to the other, and there's leaking through it. And I know that's kind of hard to comprehend a little bit, but if you think about it, there's probably, in these two areas, I think we sent out originally 300 questionnaires, and we didn't hit everybody. But if you just took loosely 300 to 500 people, and even if conservative estimate, let's say 25% of those have a downspout that's connected to the sanitary, you've got a 4-inch pipe contributing directly to your sanitary, and your sanitary is 8 to 10 to 15-inch diameter. So those are the kind of things I want to talk about with the Public Works Committee, more in detail on how some of the recommendations are, how you do that. There's some ways to try to identify worse areas than others, so you don't just test every house. You can do some flow monitoring on certain streets, and where you get water coming through, that's kind of where you want to spend your money on. Again, you're trying to fix the problem, not just fix something that may or may not be the problem. So with that, I can kind of answer some questions. I know it's just the Public Works Committee report, but I wanted to kind of give you a brief update on that. So.
Mr. Balustrade.
Mr. Gerson, you talk about there's some repairs that do need, as a result of the dye testing, repairs.
Yes.
The city's responsibility. But you kind of touched on a question I had. Have you looked at, as the group looked at, the individual homes that may have tied in to the storm? Because roughly, those homes probably have an 8-inch pipe as far as a storm going in. And when you have a down flood like this, and that's going to overwhelm the storm system coming from the residential homes. And I know there's a lot of homes in our community that have tied in, not necessarily when they were first built, but, you know, subsequent repairs and things where they've tied into the storm, and that has been a contributing factor.
Yeah, so I can try to answer that. So, you know, I've been out there talking to residents for a lot. I haven't seen them a lot lately. Luckily, I like when I don't have to see them, especially when it's raining, so. But I have been out there. There has been times, and I'm not here to point fingers at any of the residents.
Right, right.
But I have been out there where I've started the conversation and I said, hey, downspouts tied into sanitary are an issue. And there was a resident that we were out there and they just got done flooding. I believe it was back in March, and that can't happen. That didn't happen. And the plumber came out and he threw dye in her sanitary, or dye in her downspout, and it came right out on her sanitary. And she's like, how could that happen? And she had it fixed. So those things happen. There's also, again, breakages in the pipe. And like I say, it's not, for the most part, we see it's not something where the resident did it on purpose or the plumber did it on purpose. It's just find a pipe. But generally speaking, you know, those pipes, those laterals are 4 to 6 inches. And if you think about it, if you have a home and you have one of those downspouts tying in, your downspouts, you know, 3 to 4 inches diameter, and it's draining sometimes a quarter of the house, maybe more of the roof, and that's a lot of surface area going in. You could have yard drains that are tied in. A lot of people, they do the downspouts and then they go ahead and have their, you know, small yard drains that are tied in. There could also be, although with the age of the homes, they shouldn't be, but there was a time back, I think, I don't have the exact dates, but there was a time when they tied in footer drains to sanitary sewers. They don't do that anymore. And then I know from the resident surveys, there's not a lot of sump pumps out there, but if there's a sump pump, a lot of times they get tied in. So those are the kinds of things you've seen. It's from experience. I've seen it firsthand here. And I think that's where we're seeing what the problem could be. Again, it's very difficult to say, you know, you can't just increase the sanitary sewer size, because I just don't, even if I wanted to take all that clean water, as soon as I design it for a 5-year storm, it rains even heavier and harder, and and then we also got to get it downstream. So the sewers that you're tying into for the sanitary are sized for a reason. And if you said, hey, are the sanitary sewers sized for the sanitary sewage that you have? The answer is yes, they are sized correctly, but they're not sized for the sanitary sewer and the rain events that you're getting. And then on the storm sewer side, you know, you could say, okay, enlarge the storm sewers. The problem is you also have to have a place to take it. And if you've ever been in the rain events, you go down, you see the rivers swollen, well, those storm sewers go. So there are some other technologies you can do. There's some green infrastructure you can do if it turns out that, you know, after you get the sanitary sewer fixed, you still have some flooding. But just keep in mind, it's hard to understand, but when you have a rain event and you see flooding in the streets, that's not necessarily the wrong thing that happened. What happens is when you have a large rain event and the storm sewers fill up, they're designed to back up into the street. And ideally, then the street becomes a channel to get it downstream. So when you see flooding in the streets, it just means that your storm sewers have filled up and backed up. It could be that you have a blocked catch basin again. So those are the kind of maintenance things we're trying to catch up on. So I think I've answered your question, but go ahead if I didn't.
Mrs. Snyder, can I just follow up for one? Mr. Gerson, so in your opinion as engineer, if you go and look at these homes, I'm thinking of the residents, and they find that a lot of their homes are tied into the storm, and if they rerouted that down their driveway, let's say just to drain off their roofs, in your opinion, that may be a solution to their problem?
Yeah, that's actually a little different question. So most people have their downspouts tied into so the downspouts off their house, you got the gutters, they come down, the downspouts, most of them are going in the ground. And when they go in the ground, they should be connected to the storm sewer.
Right.
Many of them may have been built like that, some may have been added. It's my opinion that if you could look in a crystal ball and say, hey, put the downspouts to ground instead of in the ground into a sewer, that basically would give a delay. And what would happen is the water would come off the roof, hit the downspout, go out on the ground. A lot of times they have a splash block, It'd run down their lawn into the driveway, and it would have a time delay as to getting into the storm sewer in the street. So that would definitely help. What we're looking for is, more importantly, what we're looking for is we're looking for where the downspout comes off the house and goes into the ground and doesn't tie into the storm sewer, but it ties in the sanitary sewer. And when that happens, that's where you're getting the basement flooding, because what's happening is that storm sewer is coming down, it's a random event, very large, is going in, and it's overwhelming your sanitary sewers just like that. Just like the areas that we found where I've got an area that's doing 21 gallons per minute on a line that's just dripping or gushing in. If you had a downspout, one downspout tied into a house, that would overwhelm that 21 gallons per minute easily. It's, you know, you've got a 4-inch pipe tying in, going into your sanitary sewer. Less events would be where you have two pipes next to each other, there's a crack, and there's an infiltration or a leak through those cracks. That would be less concerning, although it would still go and contribute. So those are the kinds of things we're looking for, is where the storm sewer is getting into the sanitary. That's our first step. The storm going into the storm is, although in a crystal ball would be an issue, it's not something that we would be recommending at this time. Because that's not generally what's causing the flooding in basements.
Mr. Gerson, you did say, there's some residents here this evening, but you did say that you were going to have a meeting with the residents in this area. Once you find more questions or answers, you're still planning on having that meeting?
Yeah, so again, we've kind of talked about this a little bit in front of council before. My suggestion is we do a Public Works Committee meeting. That's kind of, I think, the body that should probably at least hear the reports, and those are public meetings. Anybody's invited to them. That's where we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what the next steps are, how we get those things done, how we approach residents. Residents can attend that meeting. But even if they don't, I think once they have that, then that report, the recommendation may come out of Public Works to the council and say, hey, we've heard from Dan, we've heard from residents, we've formed our own opinion, this is what we recommend we do as next, or the next 5 steps, and then council can act on that in terms of actually pushing the work down the road. Right after that Public Works meeting, and even before council acts on it, I think we could have a resident meeting, could try to answer their questions, especially if there's not enough time, maybe schedule a little earlier in the day, maybe do it at the community center, or maybe even here, just to try to make sure they understand what's happening, or maybe they see something or have questions on that.
Okay.
But obviously, I think the recommendation would come out of Public Works, and then council would act on it, and then obviously if you have thoughts on what we should or shouldn't do, we can have that discussion for sure, but that gives us, ability to say, okay, here's what we've got, here are some potential costs, here's what we've seen in other cities, here's what other cities have done and how they've been successful or unsuccessful. Ultimately, I think the goal is, and I think I've said it from the beginning, is, I don't want to spend money just to spend money. I want to spend money to try to find the problems and then spend money to fix the problems, because I think that's what we should be doing as a group.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Mrs. Finney.
I guess what I don't understand is, I just read that we're getting another increase from the NERSD. Why aren't they doing this? Isn't that their obligation? And what are we paying all this money? At this point, our sewer bill is more than our water bill. It's ridiculous. What are they doing for us?
Sure, I can give you a little history on that. So there's two collections that's being done. One is the Northeast Regional Sewer District is collecting money, and I believe it's through their water or sewer bill is how they collect it. And they collect that money, and what they do is they give us back a portion of that, which is called the community cost share. That is generally only used for storm sewers. So type of projects that you might think of is if you have a culvert that is failing underneath Route 91, you could use community cost share for doing that. You can also, I think in the past, we've bought a street sweeper, I believe, and some other equipment that you can use to buy equipment to be used on the storm sewer. That community cost share, what they do is they collect the money and they give you a portion of that back, or they hold that portion, and then you've got to ask for permission to use it. So in other words, you say, hey, I want to buy a street sweeper, or I want to replace 10 catch basins. And they say, yeah, that meets the requirements of the community cost share, go ahead and do that. The bulk of the money or the residual of the money they collect, they work on projects that are what they feel are regional benefits. So they have a cutoff that basically that regional effect only works on areas that drain larger than, I believe, 300 acres. So we have a section in Mayfield Heights that drains larger than 300 acres, and it's right there at the northeast corner of Mayfield Heights in where Mr. Jameson lives, that subdivision in there, that creek. At the very end of it, that's where it meets the 300 acres. So we don't generally get use out of that money, and I know they did just for instance, they did a project in there where they did some erosion on the downstream end of the culvert, and they used their regional funds for that. We didn't have to participate, they were responsible for it. But anything less than 300 acres drainage, those funds don't get used for. They would get used for, and what their theory is that your sewers now drain to the lower areas, and those lower areas have to take your water. Hence, those are regional areas that need to be taken care of. So that's the first fund. As far as raising the rates, they've went out and they feel that raising the rates is appropriate, and good thing is you're gonna get a little more cost share back. But as for Mayfield Heights, the bulk of the money's not gonna be used directly in Mayfield Heights. It'd be used for projects downstream, which are definitely important to Mayfield Heights, but they just don't feel as important as a whole. You know, politically, that could be, you could disagree or agree, but that's kind of what the rules are on it. The other fund that's being used, and what I talked about, is so the Cuyahoga County does they do maintenance on our storm and sanitary. So when a resident has a basement backup and they call up and they say, hey, my basement's backing up, or they have a clogged pipe, or if they have some issue going on with the sanitary and storm general maintenance things, they have a fund that they collect from the sanitary and storm sewer, and they put it into a fund. Now, once it's in that storm fund and once it's in the sanitary fund, it can only be used for sanitary, only used for storm, and they also control that fund. They hold it for us, if you will, and then they use that for televising lines. For instance, maybe a little bit of a sore subject, but when the water main broke on Marnell, I asked them to go out and televise Marnell and the connections to make sure they didn't get a whole lot of dirt in there when the water main broke. And so if there was, make sure they clean it. And I know there's some basements that backed up. So they are able to do work like that on a moment's notice. They have a crew. And then again, they have a contractor that they bid out every couple of years to have a larger contract do larger projects. So they do a lot of that, and I can authorize them to do that work because there are funds as long as they're being used for storm or sanitary. They also go ahead and do periodic televise into the sewers. If there's an issue that I see there's a catch basin block, they can go out and clean them. And then what they're also doing is that on road projects, large road projects, what we're doing is where we're replacing a section of storm sewer or sanitary sewer. We do have a section on Wharton we're replacing. We're paying for it through our budgets for that road, but then what we do is we give them documentation, say, hey, we did $50,000 of storm sewer work, here's the bill, and they reimburse city council from those storm or sanitary funds. What we've been trying to do in the most recent future is trying to control a little bit on how those funds are used, because they're the Mayfield Heights funds. It's just they're not in Karen's pocket, unfortunately, they're in the county's pocket. So we still have to ask for permission. And those are the funds that I'm going to want to use to repair those areas that we found from the mainline dye testing. One of the things I got to make sure is, you know, when they can do it, make sure they do it correct, and then make sure there's funds available for that. So I believe that they'd have the ability to do the corrections. I believe they have the funds. It's just a question of timing and make sure they can do it on a timely manner. If they can't, then what I would recommend is we go out for bid, get a contractor, but that's also a kind of a time delay. So they should be able to do it quickest to fix at least the larger areas that are having a problem right away. So those are the two funds that we have. And then if you have any additional things, you might have, you know, funds, sanitary sewer funds in-house or storm sewer funds. But that's kind of where the the mechanism comes out. I don't know if that answered your question either. And
Madam Chair, if I could ask, with those funds that we're going to use to repair what you found so far, can we, and sometimes that process takes a while, if the city paid for them, could we reimburse ourselves with that, with those funds? So we could
You
maybe
can.
speed the process up?
yeah, you can. The only thing, the mechanism is that we would have to go out for bid. If it's over a certain amount, we'd have to go out for bid, so we'd advertise. Typically, it takes a couple weeks, find a contractor, then get the contractor doing it, and then have to get the reimbursement. So if the county is able to do those larger areas that are dripping or gushing more than others and get those repaired, it's a mechanism that saves that advertisement. It also saves a lot of my time, and obviously you pay for mine. So I'd rather take it out of funds that they have because they're there, that's what they're used for. I think that's probably the appropriate way to do. Those funds may come into effect when we get to the next stages as to, what you do on private property. Do you do dye testing on private property, try to find out where the problems are? Do you do some of that stuff? But unfortunately, just keep in mind that those funds are limited. And if you drain down those accounts and you have a project to do, then it comes to the city as comes out of, if you tell them to do a $100,000 project and they have $20,000 and they say yes, first thing they're going to say is, where's the other 80 coming from? So that you got to be careful that you're not drawing that fund down, because you want to have that money in there so that if there's a water main break, if there's a sanitary sewer that blocks up, we need to be able to get the trucks out there and clean it. So that kind of gives you an idea. Now there's another thing, MCIP, which is the sewer district. We did ask for some assistance, specifically in the Marnell area, because we knew the reports already came out. We have asked for some financial assistance to try to figure out what are these problems going on, but we haven't heard back in terms of, yes, you got some funds, or no, you don't. And those would come out of those regional funds too. They have a program which they've set aside some money for that. So, but that being said, I think we go ahead and fix these areas. I think we have the funds to do them, get those fixed. And then I think the next step is let's do the pink areas that are shown on your screen. At least then we know what's going on. And all those areas all contributed to those neighborhoods. It's just, they're kind of on a side area. That's why I didn't do them initially. Again, I wanted to make sure that we were putting the bang for the buck. If we would have found, that all those green areas all had problems, probably the mainline dye testing may have been a waste of money, but at least we would have known what they are. But we spent $135,000 and we found out that my guess is probably the repairs might run $250,000, maybe $300,000 to do, depending on what equipment gets out there, how they got to do it, whether they excavate it, whether they do, line in the pipes. But that's a lot better than $3 to $5 million for something that's not solving any problems for you. So with that, I'll keep answering questions or try to answer questions. Do you have any?
Mr. DeJohn.
I would just like to see the report. Can you email me that report?
I will, yeah.
And these maps here, and then I would like to have that meeting scheduled as soon as possible for the evening so residents can attend. Thank you.
Makes sense. And I know the AECOM representative did the work. He's offered to come to those meetings, try to explain maybe from a different perspective, he's a lot more skilled at what he does in terms of that arena, so I'll ask him to attend that.
How did you come about choosing AECOM?
We had two bids. We had AECOM did one bid for us, and then we also had Lake County Sewer. Not Lake County Sewer. It's not a government agency. They just call them Lake County Sewer. They came in very close. In the end, the cost was very close in terms of the mainline dye testing. But as you know, I've worked with URS before. The gentleman I've worked with before, and I figured if nothing else, when I pick up the phone, he can answer a question if I have a question. So it's more familiarity, and the price was right on the numbers for it. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Mr. Gerson? Thank you very much for your explanation. Okay, Recreation and Parks Committee, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report tonight.
Thank you. Safety and Transportation, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. Note that Resolution 2021-60 is on the agenda. Chief Elliott has provided council with extensive information regarding this resolution. Chief Elliott is present to address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Mr. DeJong.
should we have Mr. Elliott come up and explain that to us now or at, when it
wait
comes up?
till-
I'd like the residents to know about the program.
Either or. I mean, he's going to explain it now or when it comes before us. Mr. Elliott, do you want to, Chief Elliott, would you like to come up to the?
Hi. I'd be more than happy to answer any question. I provided council with a PowerPoint presentation, the same PowerPoint presentation that I gave Mayor DeSico, Finance Director Karen Fagan, HR Renee Augustine, Mark Palumbo, our captain, has extensive history in this area, so he really put together the nuts and bolts of the program. He couldn't be here tonight. But we did provide that presentation. It lasted about an hour or so. We answered several questions. I just thought it was important enough for you guys to get the same presentation, so I sent it by way electronically in hard copies. I provided a detailed memo explaining several areas and gave my opinions on the need for the program. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'd just like the residents to know a little bit about the program.
So, as we all know, firefighting is a very inherently dangerous job. I mean, not only are we going into burning buildings, at times we're dealing with people with sicknesses, diseases, and those obvious inherent dangers. But one of the things that we also found out in recent years is we also have high risk of cancers and heart diseases and mental illnesses. These have been proven over the years. Buildings today are burning twice as fast as they did back when they were built in the 50s. We're using a lot more synthetic materials, which burn hotter and faster. We have half the time to get a fire out before the building will collapse as we did in years ago. So our health and safety are you know, my most important thing that I want to provide to my guys. We offer them the highest quality safety gear. I've come before you before and asked for gear purchases. I put it in a budget annually to replace gear according to the NFPA standards. We got a grant several years ago for the air packs. We have the latest technology in the air packs. So those are two of the most important items that we can put on our body to do the job we need to do. But some of the things that we're encountering now is after the fire, during investigation phases, when the fire is out and we're breathing in all that toxic smoke and the smells and everything else, we're coming back to the station with snot coming out of our nose that it's black and our hair with soot in it. And even doing everything that we're supposed to do, we're still getting some of these things in our body. We've done a lot of good things to reduce some of these cancers risk. You know, we went to the safety committee meeting and healthcare committee meeting, and got a infrared sauna to help bring those toxins out of our pores after the fire. We could get 90% of the toxins out of our body by going into that sauna for 15 minutes after a fire, which is the last thing guys want to do after busting their tail on a fire, is riding a bike for 15 minutes in a hot 100-degree sauna. But it's the right thing to do. We also don't wear our gear around the stations anymore, and trying to we wash things. We have baby wipes, and we're washing our faces. We're washing our gear after every incident. It used to be a badge of honor to have a dirty helmet, dirty gear, dirty face after a fire. It was kind of macho, but those days are way beyond us. We got to worry about health and safety, and this is what this program is about today, is testing some of these things and trying early detection so our guys can go home to their family and enjoy a retirement that they deserve. So this little bit of information here gave a background on what some of the things that they're testing and some of the things that we're not getting by going to your annual doctor on a yearly basis. It goes a lot deeper and further than that. So that's the program in a nutshell. It's a health and safety annual exam program where a company comes out and does extensive health and medical exam on all the firefighters, where they're doing ultrasounds and detailed blood exams and doing x-rays and you know, it's pretty, the list is 2 pages long on all the details that they're providing in that service. Other cities around us, we're one of the few around us that really don't have any kind of program. Our neighbors next door offered a program. I worked in another city. Prior to coming to Mayfield Heights, I was getting these exams 30 years ago. So it's not a new thing. It's just new to this body that I'm presenting today. So if you want me to answer more questions when the resolution comes up, or if you have questions now, I'll be happy to entertain those.
We can answer when it comes before us.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Board of Zoning Appeals is on recess, but they are looking at a special meeting, possibly the first week in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. And Planning Commission, Mr. Balestreo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Planning Commission didn't meet on Monday, but we met on last Thursday, July the 8th. Preliminary and final site plans were approved for Sheets and Raising Cane's and the Mayland properties. They were not on the original agenda that council received, but they were placed on the revised agenda that you received this evening for council's approval. However, they are asking that the motions tonight be tabled pending BZA variance approvals. So I would ask Mrs. Snyder to ask for a motion to table these motions when they come up on the agenda, and we'll vote on them after BZA meets.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam,
Mrs. Sabetta.
thank you. Mr. Balestria, I see that Raising Cane is on the agenda for the ABR on Thursday, and just wondering why Sheets was not, if they need not go back to the ABR?
They're just we as the Planning Commission are just waiting for the BZA approvals. I mean, ABR would be a separate entity that we won't rule on as a council, so.
No, just wondering if they were
I
done.
don't know why they're not, so.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, we will move to the comments from the public. We will now proceed to this pursuant to city code. Each person will be allotted 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allowed for the entire public portion. If you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized. Approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. It is now 8 o'clock. I will open up the public portion. Ma'am, would you like to come up forward? Thank you.
You're tired of seeing me. Janet Harris, 5923 Marnell Avenue. Am I supposed to give, is there another?
No, you're good.
All right. So I have a few questions for Mr. Gerson. I don't know where my 5 minutes is going to be. You know, it's kind of,
A question and answer.
So,
I'm sorry? Somebody say something?
yes.
Yeah, this is not a question and answer. You may make a statement addressed to council, but that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you have questions, you can submit them and we can get them to Mr. Gerson for you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Or I can email him directly.
Perfect, yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So, you know, when a council member comes up to you, when they see you and says, hey, did you get rainwater? Did you get sewer water in your basement? The first thing they say, that's the first thing they say, you know it's bad. So we are continuing to panic on Marnell every time it rains, and now we have a fun little sinkhole that's been in our street since the water main break in May. I know I personally called the service department a couple weeks ago when people were slamming their cars into the sinkhole, that believe it was the water department came out, poured gravel in, and that has sunk. They came out, put out cones. Those got run over. They put out big cones. This morning, they jackhammered the sinkhole back out and then put caution tape around it. That's where we are and what we're still dealing with from the water main break to add more fun to Marnell. My question, or my comments, is wondering that with the money that the city was given, how that is going to be allocated as far as how we're going to get it. I heard Mr. Gerson. It kind of sounded a bit of Groundhog's Day. I remember hearing all of those things that he said last March when we approached this, when we had our last basement flooding. All the things that he had said about the dye testing, I thought that was done. If I was listening correctly, it doesn't seem like it had all been completed in the Marnell area. I heard he said 9 needs to be repaired, 17% of the sewers, but it sounded like some of the same things, mainline testing, dye testing needs to be done on Temple, Mayland, Lander. I thought we had gotten past all that because I remember hearing that last March. So I'm not sure why we still haven't moved forward, why we're still trying to figure it out. The other part about the downspouts, is the city going to come out and inspect our homes and tell us if we're, the whole Marnell, Mayfair, Byron, Gilbert, we all have downspouts that are causing this problem? Is the city going to come out and tell us that, or is each home responsible to do that, and how are we going to know that? Some residents in the Ascot area have already fixed that, and they're still, it sounds like, being blamed for it. So I'm just not sure where anything is moving forward as far as the Marnell area. It sounds like we're still in the first step, let's do the mainline dye testing, which I thought we had done. That is my one comment. As far as the money that was allocated, we are concerned that that money could be used to start this project, do something with this project. We know that there's flooding. When that money is going to be done. I also would like to know, how do we get notified about the Public Works Committee meeting? How will we be notified about that? Or do you know of a date when that is already and I can just mark it down? There's a lot of us here from the Marnell, Mayfair, Ascot area. We are here directly for this problem. We will be coming to the Public Works Committee meeting as well. I don't know if that meets like every whatever, but if you could just clarify that. I know that's a question, but I'm still wondering. That's really all I have to say. We're not, I appreciate Chief Elliott and all that the firefighters do. We're not taking money away from them, if that's what some people are thinking. That's what I'm hearing. But we are concerned that the money that has been given to our city be used to help us stop flooding. It's a panic every time. I'm leaving on vacation. Who knows what I'm going to come back to next week? A flooded basement. It is a panic every single time, and it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't have to live your life like that in a beautiful city like Mayfield that's giving all kinds of amenities except flooded basements. So please help us. Please help us. Let's move forward past mainline dye testing and get something moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Harris.
Do you want me to leave this paper with my name or no?
You could, yeah, that'd be great. You just bring it up, Karen.
Is your email address on there?
No, it didn't have.
I'm sure Dan, do you know how to get up? Dan knows.
Okay, thank you.
We can tell you when the meeting's gonna be.
Sorry?
We'll alert
tell you
you.
when the Public Works and Services meeting
Okay,
is. We'll
thank you.
email you. Yeah, and it'll be on the website too.
Okay. Would anyone else like to be heard?
Hello, my name is Chad Lichten. I'm a longtime resident of Mayfield Heights. I have autism.
Oh,
I just
what
want
is
to
your
start.
address?
Yeah, 6295 Fairhaven. And I have these 2 letters. When I talked to community ops about this particular issue I'm going to talk about, they told me to send a letter to a neighbor. This is all about a neighbor who is bullying me because I'm sensitive to light. He has singled me out. He's made that clear in many ways. And we live in a very restrictive way because of our neighbor's actions. So if you'd like, I'd like to pass these out. This is the letter I sent. This is the letter that we received. The letter we received is pretty harsh. May I pass it out to you? Okay.
Yeah. Just take one down and pass them to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, so the backstory is, I don't know, there's a lot of details, but the neighbor doesn't live like any of us. He owns the house, but literally in the 4 or so years he's lived there, never stays overnight. He comes there for about an hour a day. He bragged when he first moved there about all the security that he was installing. He had all these contractors coming there for literally a year, just every day, people installing stuff on this house. And I'm just saying, this guy is not exactly a resident. I live here, you know, and every night. So we've had to have our front window blocked off because of this post light with this insanely bright point source of light that in the darkness, and I am up all night usually. I mean, I like the nighttime. It's not kind of a peaceful time for me to live. And this point source of light is so stinging to my retina that even looking out my front window in any direction for a half a second is painful. So therefore, we lose our window. And this bullying from this neighbor who knows my weakness and has made it worse on purpose and just kind of gets away scot-free, and I have to suffer, and we have to live in a restricted way because there is no ordinance about light intensity, light sources, dispersion, any of this. And it is, sorry, am I talking too loud?
No.
Oh, okay. Here, let me look here. When you're in the dark at night, your eyes adjust to the dark. And when you look at a point source that's, he told us in the letter, it's, or on the phone, it was 3 25-watt bulbs, but they're LEDs, so those are 10 times brighter than an incandescent bulb. This is like a 750-watt incandescent bulb right in our eye, outside our front window, and it has caused major damage to my life. I'm being honest with you. It's all I want, really. I'm a very simple person. I enjoy looking out my window. Yeah, the view is nice. I miss having the view. I especially miss the natural light. But this guy should appreciate the fact that your security is gone. You have no security when you, I mean, sure, you could install a system, but there is no better security than actually being up at night and being able to look out of your front window. If you look on record, I've called, 911 when I've seen suspicious activity. Not that I often do, but I have because I saw it and it was right there. And now I don't get that luxury of even having security because of his immature and I just want to say we talked with community ops and it did not lead to a resolution. Community ops, the last thing they told us to do was to send a nice letter explaining the problem, kind of like not an ultimatum, but just sort of like put it in words. So we did, and that's what's on that letter. And what we received back from him is on the other letter, and it is a hard thing to read. But just to know that people who don't even live in Mayfield Heights, but they own a home, a second home, a storage home, whatever he does here, he has all his blinds closed. He's a very antisocial, mean, sadistic person. He puts mouse traps outdoors for any raccoon or cat to be hurt in. This guy is mean beyond anyone I've ever met. He has singled me out, and there's more details than I could fit in this 5 minutes. I don't know where I'm at. Am I at 4 minutes? It's been a difficult thing, and I just don't feel like in Mayfield Heights anyone should be. I don't think bullies should have an outlet for bullying, especially someone who is.
Mr. Licton?
Yeah, sure.
You hit your 5 minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to
sorry.
wrap it up with
I'm
just a
done.
fast sentence?
Oh, sure. I'll just say real quick. I'll just say I think I've pretty much said most everything. I guess my question to you, but I know you're not allowed to ask questions, is basically I'm seeking counsel's advice on how to get this resolved. So
You can definitely send us all questions, and we can try and address them to the right department or see if we can help you. So anytime you want to reach out to us, you can do that. So know that we're here, and you can find all of our email addresses on the website or phone numbers, as well as contact the mayors and speak with him as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for listening.
So we heard you, and we're, just willing to listen. So anytime you need to reach out to us.
I so
okay?
appreciate it. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
You're
Okay.
welcome. Would anyone else like to be heard this evening? Oh, ma'am, the lady over here on the left. Thank you. Yes, you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Janine Beaucaire, and I'm on the corner of Ascot and Bellingham, along with Joanne DiTomaso. And as Mr. Gearson didn't want to point fingers at the person he was talking about, I'm the one that spent almost $50,000 on my home to prevent water from coming in my basement. I have not only waterproofed all four sides of both mine and Joanne's home, I have put a backflow preventer in. I have just, when we all got water, Marnell and us, and Mr. Gearson came along with my waterproofer. And yes, they dye tested my home, and there was a leak. So yes, it was my responsibility, and I had to spend another $12,000 to fix that problem. And then we got water again. So there isn't much more money that I could spend. I've had my spouts of all, my downspouts that he says he doesn't want to finger point to, that have been fixed. So the problem of the downspouts, I don't even want to hear it, because mine have been fixed. They took all of my sewer and sanitary and reconnected them, put bigger piping in, and now have raised everything, so to speak, above ground, and ran that water, and my backflow preventer should be preventing this. So when we got water again, which wasn't a lot, thank God, again, after that happened, I'm screaming and yelling because I travel for a living. Thank God Joanne is home, because, we'd have to panic along with my other fellow residents, panic. And we're supposed to be going on vacation, and I don't even know if I want to go because I have nobody now to come look in my house to see if there's going to be water. My phone's been going off, as I'm sure everybody else that lives in Mayfield. Phones have been going off with flood alerts. And I've got to panic. I have a completely finished basement that I have repaired not once, twice, 3 times already. And now we understand that money has been allocated to the city. And thank you to the 3 council people, and you know who you are, who voted against it. And please, and to you, Chief, I commend the fire and the police. I have an uncle who died as a firefighter. I have sisters who are nurses. I've been in healthcare for 27 years. And I have a sister who's a life flight nurse during COVID, and everybody deserves a raise. There's no doubt these firemen and police during COVID deserve that raise. But we also deserve that money to be allocated to help us. Nobody wants to buy my home. Her own sons, the DiTomaso boys, said, "Ma, we don't want that house. We'll rip it down." Nobody's gonna buy our houses because we have a water problem. We can't sell the house. Joanne's, sorry, Joe, in her 70s. I mean, she can't sell that home. Mayor DeSico, I know if Nancy lived in this city, if any of you that do live in this city, you wouldn't want your own parents to have to deal with this water in the basement. It's disgusting already. I grew up in Solon. I did not grow up in Mayfield, but I chose to move to this city. I moved to this city when Mayor DeJohn was mayor, and God bless his soul, rest his soul, because that city, they cared about this city. And it seems like this city now is there's only a few people that care about this city. Come on now. We need to fix this problem. I can't continue to live like this. I can't continue to lose things and not use a basement. I have a ranch. So where am I supposed to put my stuff? I need my basement my office is down there. I'm working from home this month, thank God. But I've got to make sure my cords I have $1,000 worth of equipment, not that that seems that much, but I have $1,000 worth of equipment that I'm working with every day, satellite-wise, and I've got to make sure my cords are above ground so that I don't fry my equipment. that I've had to replace 3 times already. So I'm just asking, please think about what's going on and please fix our problem. We don't want to hear about dye testing anymore. We're done. This problem now needs to be fixed. Stop with the dye testing and just come fix our problem. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard tonight? The gentleman in the back, thank you.
Hello, my name's Don Harrison. I live on 5935 Marnell Avenue. I'd like to talk a little bit about the incident that happened as far as with the water main break. As you probably do know, that there was a couple basements that did flood. Okay, one person's basement flooded. I guess when they were restarting the water, she was out there when they were turning the water back on, and all of a sudden the pipes erupted again. Well, from what I understand, and I'm hoping this can be cleared up, I don't know who was involved with this, but it was said that this woman did not know what she was talking about, the one that witnessed this, okay? And that person's absolutely right. The person does not know because they do not know how to analyze how to turn the valve back on. From what I understand, the water company said it was done wrong. I don't know what really happened. But the thing is this woman was pretty much humiliated because the fact is she did not know what she was talking about. All she did was witness and convey what she saw, okay? And she was made to sound like she was an idiot. Now, their basement was flooded, okay? Now, when our basement's flooded from the storms, you guys came out with dump trucks and helped us move some of the stuff out. They didn't have that luxury. And that might be something you guys look at, that when something like this does happen, if it is something that's coming back to the city, where there might have been something wrong. Now, if it was the city's fault, okay, everybody's a human being. There's a human mistake, we're human. We make mistakes. Okay, maybe have a class on how to turn that on so it doesn't happen again. That's fine. And as a taxpayer, I don't mind paying for something like that due to the fact is that it was a human mistake. But you don't talk to one of the residents and make them feel like an idiot for just something that they conveyed what they saw. It wasn't her fault. All she did was convey what she saw. She doesn't know how to turn on the water to keep it from preventing to have that rupture again. She doesn't know that. And now we have these neighbors that are planning on leaving Mayfield Heights. They have a young child. They were part of our community, and they're really talking about leaving. But the thing that kind of upsets me is you guys offered us the luxury of helping us out. Why wasn't this done for them? And their basements were flooded. They had like 3 feet of water in their basement. They just made it up. They just had a downstairs done for their baby, a playroom. And nobody here gave them the same luxuries we did when our basements flooded. And that's a shame. And I don't know who's involved, but I think that ought to be kind of mentioned. And I think they actually deserve an apology. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to be heard tonight? Okay, it is now 8:20, and I will close the public portion. We will move to resolutions, starting with Resolution 2021-59. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2021-59, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Level Heads, Inc. to provide professional services as architect engineer in connection with the design and construction of the Mayfield Lights Aquatic Center and the Community Center, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Teresi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria. Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mr. Balestrea. This evening, we had a committee of the whole meeting with a presentation from Level Heads Architecture Company. This resolution would authorize the city to retain professional services in order to be able to move forward with the design and construction of the Mayfield Aquatic and Community Center project. Does any member have any further questions at this time? Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. The question I have is, how intertwined are you with the GPD group? And the reason I'm asking is, what if the GDP group doesn't get their contract renewed the next time it comes up?
Hold on. Mr. Murphy.
The contract with GPD is for the aquatic center. It does nothing to do with the city engineer contract. That's a separate contract that council awarded.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay. GPD is the city engineer.
Correct.
We have a contract with them to provide engineering services to the city.
Correct.
GPD was also selected by council to work as the owner's representative with regard to the aquatic and community center project. That has nothing to do with their duties as city engineer. So, you know, they're
It's two separate contracts?
two separate contracts. The city engineer contract will be up for renewal, I think, the end of this year. And at that point, then council could continue with GPD or could select another engineer. But the other contract will continue.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other, Mrs. Tressi?
I have a question for Mr. Murphy. You gave us this revised resolution tonight with the increase in price.
Correct.
And why did it increase?
I might count on,
Mrs.
Mrs.
Fagan is
Fagan.
fighting at the
I
bit
can
here.
actually take that one. There was a slight increase of $7,150 for commissioning for the aquatic portion of the building.
Explain commissioning?
That's a great question, because that's something that I had to ask them for a definition on also. I'm going to take a stab at it, and if I don't do a good job, Jason, please correct me. The commissioning not only will be on the aquatic, but we'll have commissioning on other areas of this building also. We bring in an expert who is not only there through the design, but also through the construction and the final phase, testing the equipment that's putting in to make sure that it's working the way it should be efficiently and effectively.
So that equals commissioning?
Correct. Yes, not how
Is
you
that a
and I normally.
person? Is that a
It's
person?
a firm.
Is it a position?
It's a firm.
It's a firm?
Yes, so they would be contracting with a firm to do that, yes.
And that additional cost is going directly to that firm, that commissioning person, firm?
Right.
Can you explain that, please?
So, Levelhead's contract has some additional services that we requested as part of the proposal that you have in front of you, and one of them is commissioning services that Karen did a very good job explaining. So it's a sub-consultant to Levelheads. It would just, there's only one contract that we're requesting, and that's Levelheads. It's just a service under the umbrella of the AE contract.
And you didn't have that in the initial contract?
Correct.
What
The
made you-
original proposal did not include that. We had reviewed it with the administration team, with the selection committee to kind of vet through some of the additional services that were being proposed. We've added and subtracted some. That was one that we did incorporate in the final version.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes, the proposal from Levelheads, which was originally June 18th, and then the revised proposal is June 25th, is attached to the legislation.
Correct. I have
And
it
is
here.
part of the legislation. So
I just-
you can see where the additional
Yeah.
cost is under
Just
the additional services.
Wondered why, when they prepared the initial one, they didn't include that cost, so it was all one cost.
Can I add one more statement?
Sure.
The other clarification that we put in there too was just adding more detail in terms of some of those ad services within the proposal, just to outline as part of the fee negotiations, what the services, and specifically it's the aquatic consulting to detail out, their services as part of the AE contract.
So is that just a one-time fee, or is that gonna, every time we use this
Yeah, this is,
consultant?
what we presented there, that's just we call a lump sum fee, so it's a not to exceed number that.
$7,000.
Yep,
Or
for that particular line.
71,000. 7175.
So the commissioning costs $7,000.
Correct.
Estimated?
Estimated.
Estimated. Okay, so if it's estimated, that means the number could change. Am I correct?
No, it's a not to exceed, and it's in there at $7,175.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other further questions from council? Okay. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes?
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2021-59 has been approved. Moving to Resolution 2021-60, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2021-60, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with LifeScan Wellness Centers to provide wellness physicals for all firefighters in the Mayfield Heights Fire Department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mrs. Tressi. We should have all received the memo and PowerPoint presentation from Chief Elliott. It explains in detail what the contract would provide to promote and be more proactive to wellness for our firefighters. The cost would approximately be $27,036, which would provide services for 36 firefighters. Does any member of council have questions for Chief Elliott? Mr. Balestria.
Just one for the chief, if I may. Chief, when your firefighters get the medical portion of their exams, the diagnostic testing, is that reviewed by a physician from Hillcrest or someone that you've contracted with? I mean, for the reads, like a chest X-ray, or do they actually have to do that on their own?
No, so the company would provide a private consultation with each firefighter on that. And they would go over all the findings with them. If there's anything that was, say somebody found out that they have high blood pressure, they'd be, it's up to them at that point to go to their personal physician to get their condition treated. Or if somebody was advised that they have high glucose or borderline diabetic, that they're gonna follow up with their private physician on that.
Okay, no, the question is, I thought maybe I misread it, but in your proposal for the wellness, the whole wellness program, they were going to get like a routine chest X-ray or something as part of that wellness program.
Right.
My question is, who reviews that?
Right, the company will.
The company, the physician?
The nurse practitioner,
Okay, it's a nurse practitioner.
yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
All right,
But
thank
it's
you.
the company would be
They have a
reviewing.
medical
Yes,
professional on
they
staff
send
to-
they have a whole crew that comes out here and addresses.
Yeah, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that there's somebody on staff somewhere that,
Of course, I mean,
That-
it'd be
yeah.
useless if there wasn't any kind of.
but I didn't know if, once they get those results, if they referred out to,
Right.
somebody local, or was our responsibility or your responsibility to have those test results reviewed?
I mean, I won't get any test results personally. There are still, privacy issues
right.
and things like that. But, it's their own health, so they will follow up with their personal physician on any, ill findings.
Okay. Thanks,
So
Chief.
this might be a question for Mrs. Fagan. Since we're being proactive with the firefighters, would there possibly be a lower rate or a better rate or a discount to from our city insurance to, back to us? You know, like when you have homeowners and you add the security systems or whatever, you get a discount to your insurance. But now that we're being more proactive, maybe not reaching out to our personal doctors, you know, for these exams, could we possibly get a rebate or
I don't see a rebate possibly. Our health insurance is all based on the claims that come in. We will certainly share this information with our health insurance company. But what I see the benefit of this is long-term, there could be a definite cost savings because of our firefighters. If we're catching these things early, we're catching them early where it's less costly to correct them than if we waited till it became a major health incident later on down the road.
Right. Okay, and then Mrs. Tracy.
I think Chief Elliott is correct when you think about 9/11 and all the firefighters that were there, and just like the firefighters that are in Miami, you know, they get through the disasters at that moment, but you know that 9/11 firefighters, many of them passed away from the smoke inhalation or heart problems, COPD, 6 months to a year, 2 years later. It's, you know, you have to think about that. It doesn't happen today, but it could happen in 6 months, and these firefighters still have young families. It's could be really pretty tragic without something like this.
To kind of follow up a little bit on what Ms. Fagan said, one of our next door neighbor cities who use this company, there was a very healthy, you know, firefighter, probably in his early 40s. To me, is young. And healthy, eats right, went and did the stress test, and he failed the stress test and found out that he had a 90% blockage, and he went and had it addressed, and was able to perform the job. If he would have had a full-out heart attack and he was out for a significant amount of time, you know, that's going to be, you know, obviously a higher insurance claim, and that could have a trickle-down effect on our premiums. And the big thing is lost time. You know, every time, you know, somebody's not on duty, they're not here to protect our residents, and it's also costing us money to fill that spot, you know. So, you know, it's not just you know, there's that lost time factor too that I think it's important to, you know, that we have to fill seats. We have to fill the seats on the trucks in order to protect our residents. And if they're not here because of illness, you know, they're out sick, and we have to fill that spot.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for the chief? Well, I think we're good. Thank you. All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2021-60 has been adopted. Moving to resolution number 2021-61, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2021-61, a resolution commending Rick Sharlillo upon his retirement from the Service Department of the City of Mayfield Heights, Ohio. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Teresi, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mr. Balestria. We'd like to thank Rick for all your dedicated years of service to the city and hope you enjoy your retirement. I don't think he's here with us this evening. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2021-61 has been approved. Resolution 2021-62, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2021-62, a resolution commending Richard Orcutt upon his retirement from the Police Department of the City of Mayfield Heights, Ohio. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Belstria.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Teresi, second by Mr. Balestrea. Mr. Orcutt is not here with us this evening. We'd like to thank you for all your years of public service and providing safety to our residents. We hope you have a safe, healthy retirement. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Belstria.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This resolution has now been approved. This time, I need a motion to add 2021-63 to tonight's agenda.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to place on the agenda.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Belstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this motion is now on tonight's agenda. Mr. Murphy to read.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution number 2021-63, a resolution determining the premises known as 1531 Longwood Drive, Mayfield Heights, Ohio, Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-24-035, to be a public nuisance, authorizing the mayor to issue a purchase order for the demolition of the single-family dwelling and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Belstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Sabetta. We heard from our law director this evening. We all received the memo about demolishing the property on Longwood, and there has been an increase to this cost. Do we have any further questions? Mr. DeJohn?
No further questions, just a comment. I had inquired with Mr. Murphy whether we get reimbursed for this money, the $18,000 to $20,000. I asked him if it goes on those taxes, correct? And we don't necessarily get reimbursed, and Mr. Murphy can explain why.
Yes, when we do demolish a residence like that, let's say the cost is $15,000, we will take that money, and Mrs. Fagan will certify that to the county treasurer for collection with other taxes. Now, if there is, for example, a foreclosure where the house is badly underwater, the mortgagee gets paid and the taxes get paid, and we may get paid as part of that, or we may not, depending on how much money the foreclosure brings. But if we can get it on the tax duplicate, and I know we do that monthly, then we're in a good position to collect that money. In this case, we've already collected, we've been paid about $12,000 and some odd dollars by the insurance company. And the balance of that money, the insurance claim went to the mortgagee. So if this costs about 18, we've already got 12,000 in the bank, so we should be able to collect it all. Unfortunately, the one who owns the house is the poor woman who was killed in the fire, so she's not going to pay.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any further questions? Mrs. Tressi?
I have a question. So this is the second or third house we've are demolishing. Some are going, land bank is going to do them. What's the city's plan with the property? Have we thought about like selling that lot, or we have the one at Pepper Drive? What do we do with the property?
We don't own it.
So none of the properties belong to us.
No, they still belong to whoever the property owner is when the house was demolished. But that's why we take and we put our cost on the taxes, so that when that property is sold, hopefully we'll get our cost.
So they sell it as a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yep.
a lot?
Vacant lot, which is, rule of thumb is about 20% of the value of the
Right,
house
yeah.
is the lot.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this resolution has been approved. Moving to ordinances, I will now turn this portion of the meeting to Mrs. Teresi for the next two ordinances.
Oh, boy. Okay. Here. Ordinance 2021-24. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Madam Chair, temporary chair. Ordinance number 2021-24, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with Laborers Local Union 860, Service Department, and declaring an emergency. Third reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? It's third reading, we're just going to vote on it, right?
Yep.
Motion to,
Approve.
motion to approve.
Moved.
Moved by, was that Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ballestrea. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
No.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
No.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
No.
Mrs. Snyder.
Abstain.
This ordinance has been defeated. We'll move on to ordinance 2021-27. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance number 2021-27, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Ohio Council 8, Local 1617, Office and Building Staff Bargaining Unit, and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Do I have a motion to place on second reading?
Can we suspend the rules?
Motion to suspend.
Motion to suspend.
Motion to suspend the rules. Do I
Move.
have a motion to suspend Mr. Ballestrea? Second?
Finney.
Second, Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
No.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
No.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Abstain.
And now we have a
Is
motion
it
to
4-2?
4-2 to 1.
Okay, 4-2, 1 abstain, so it's on second reading.
421.
So 2021-27 has been placed on second reading.
We should have just considered it.
Moving to motions. Motion B.
Motion to approve the preliminary and final site plan for a new 3,331 square foot building for a Raising Cane's restaurant at 5880 Mayfield Road, contingent upon the parking variance being granted.
There was a motion made earlier to place this on the table. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ballestrea, second by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to table this.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This motion has now been tabled. Moving to motion C, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve the preliminary and final site plan for a new 6,070 square foot building for a Sheetz convenience store and fueling station at 5900 Mayfield Road, contingent upon the parking variance being granted.
There is also a motion to place this on the table. Do I have a motion by Mr. Ballestrea? Second.
moved.
Second, Finney.
By Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to place this on the table.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Motion C has also been tabled. Is there any new business or comments from council? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Balestra, second by, no one wants
Right
to
here.
leave? Mrs. Savetta.
Nobody wants to go home.
Everyone signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are now adjourned. Thank you. No, everybody wants to get out of here.